Hi, this is Wesley Lawton. I'm the therapist at Growing Forward Counseling based in Mount Clemens, Michigan. And I see people in person here at my office, as well as outside at a local park, if that's more what you're comfortable with, as well as telehealth from anywhere across the state. And so I do these videos from time to time, probably a couple a month or so, talking about different issues related to mental health. And in some cases, like with this video, I'm really inspired by some of my work with clients and talking about issues that are coming up with multiple clients around the same time in one form or another. And so obviously, I'm not going to violate my client's privacy by giving any details about their lives, but um, what I'm going to talk about today speaks to some issues that they are experiencing in various, very different forms, but there's kind of a common thread. Sometimes when that happens, my radars go up and it's like, oh, hey, maybe this is something that lots of people could benefit from. And so I'm happy to share this information with you. Obviously, this is all just from my perspective as a human being and as a therapist, somebody who focuses intently on mental health and relationships and living the best life that we can live, whatever that looks like. I know that looks very different. Success and fulfillment and happiness and joy look different from person to person, whatever your goals are. But I hope to speak in this video and in all of my videos to things that are somewhat universal, things that everybody experiences um, at various levels. So today I want to talk about regret. And regret is something I do believe that we've all encountered in some way or another. What do we do with regret? What do we do when we feel like we've wasted a bunch of time and energy um, and relationships that don't go the way that we want them to, or loss of a loved one and wishing that we had spent our time with them differently, or investing in people or situations that end up not reaching the place that we want them to reach, and we've decided that it's time to give up or to change our relationship with this situation. In all these kinds of examples, which are things that many of us face, it's very normal, very common and natural to feel like, well, that was a waste. Look at all those years. Look at all that time. Look at all that energy. Look at all of the stuff that could have been spent somewhere else. Or maybe you made a mistake. Maybe you've behaved in ways that you regret behaving in. And it's like, wow, I've sunk so much time and energy into this particular thing that I've been doing that I now wish that I had never even done and I could have spent that elsewhere. What do we do with that regret? Do we carry it around? Um, do we kick ourselves for it? Do we carry it like a heavy burden? Um, if we want to live free of it, how can we do that in a way that feels honest, that doesn't feel like a cop out or like we're um, giving approval? What's the word? Condoning, that we're condoning what happened, that thing that didn't work out the way we wanted it to, that thing that we were doing that we now wish we hadn't done. How can we do this in an honest way? That's what I want to talk about today. So let me start with something that is probably one of my more controversial beliefs, and that is that I don't like using the word bad. Okay, so probably for many different reasons, some of you just kind of maybe felt a little bit of a clenching up when I said that, and it could be for um, uh, issues of feeling like you're being dishonest, as I was talking about before. It could be for religious or moral reasons. Let me explain why I don't like using the word bad. Okay, and this is something that I don't generally talk about with clients. I don't enforce this. I'm not language police. I'm talking about in my own life, in my own brain, the way that I think about things. Okay. I just don't find the word bad to be particularly helpful. It's not really specific enough to me, because when people say bad, they can mean lots of different things. And generally, those things fall into two different categories. One is something like evil, and the other is something like unpleasant. So I'm just going to use these umbrella terms, evil versus unpleasant, to describe why I don't like the word bad specifically. So with evil, when I say I don't like the word bad, I am not saying that I don't believe in evil versus good, that I don't believe, that I think that everything is just fine and it's all equal and it's all good and totally bought into postmodernism, that because we can't universally define these terms for everybody, we should just drop them. That's a really simplified statement about postmodernism. I know it's way beyond that, but I do believe in good versus evil, right? We just look around. There are forces in this world and in our lives that are for good and love and peace and joy, and there are forces in this world that are out to quash those things. I think quash is a word. It's a fun one if it is. There are forces in this world that are out to just lift up somebody's own self to at the detriment of others by crushing them down or at sabotaging the good work that's going on in the world. We've all seen this, we've all experienced this, so to me that's obvious. Okay, so when I say I don't like using the word bad, I'm not saying that I don't believe in um, like evil, however, whatever that word means, maybe for you. And I think that usually when we say bad, at least when we're talking about mental health, when I hear about it from my clients, what they really mean are things that are unpleasant, things that they don't like, things that hurt, uh, and things that are hard, right? Something like that. And uh, when we use bad, we equate those things with the evil stuff. It's like it is, when it comes to evil, when it comes to the kinds of things I was talking about a little bit ago, we would be better without that in our world. We want less evil. We want evil to go away, to be destroyed, whatever that means. But the hard things, the painful things, the unpleasant things, those aren't necessarily things that are uh, bad, things that are 100% things that we want to go away necessarily, right? When we classify things that are hard, things that are painful, things that are unpleasant as bad, we really kind of throw them out and we waste the opportunity for good to come of it. Things that are uh, desirable, things that have to do with our growth and development as people and reaching our full potential, being the best version of ourselves. Sometimes those things come most effectively out of those things that we might classify as bad. And I don't think that I can honestly say that those things are bad if good can come of it, right? So that's why I prefer to use words when this is what we're talking about. Prefer to use words like unpleasant or undesirable or hard, difficult, challenging, right? When I talk about where other people might normally say good or bad, I'll sometimes say, like when I work with grieving clients, right? The good days and the bad days. I generally will say the good days and the hard days, right? And I don't do it in a way, again, I'm not enforcing this, like, don't say the word bad. It's just, I find that more useful. I find that more accurate to what's going on because the hard days that we go through when we're grieving are necessary parts of the grief journey. We can't get rid of them. We can't avoid them. It's just like it's part of it, and it gets us to a good place of healing and of growth and of finding our new normal and becoming who we really are and really being refined. These are things that can happen on those bad days of grief. It's just one example. Okay, so I hope that that makes sense. I hope that that's something that you can at least tolerate or consider. I'm not telling you to never use the word bad. I do use it from time to time, just as kind of shorthand for those other things when the person I'm talking to knows what I mean when I say bad. But I do definitely say it less than the average person, less than my clients, I would say. Okay, so I wanted to start with that. Uh, Now, one more issue about the word bad that came up with a client somewhat recently. I've been accused in the past of being uh, what's the word? It's toxically positive, right? Toxic positivity. Have you heard that term before? Um, I was accused of a stranger of that by a stranger with that one time on social media, and I mean it doesn't hurt. I'm not festering over it, but it was memorable. It was really, like really interesting. Like the thing that I posted was I said very straightforwardly that we need to acknowledge the hard and the painful things in our lives, and they just said that it was toxic positivity, and I'm like that's not. I think you might have missed this part that I said. But just in case what I'm describing comes off as toxic positivity, I want to let you know that I am deeply, deeply aware of the pain and suffering of this world, of this life. I specialize in grief and trauma work as a therapist. Um, and when I think about it, when I focus on it, which I need to sometimes, um, I get pretty emotional about it. I empathize, I have compassion. Um, when I think about the starvation and the abuse and the preventable disease, or even of course the diseases that are not preventable, but just the things that people go through. Oftentimes people who did nothing to ask for it, nothing to deserve it. It's just life can be very unfair, at least from my perspective, and um, this stuff is there. I know it. And I have hard stuff in my own life, of course. And so we're aware of these things. We acknowledge these things. We cry about these things or yell about these things or fight for causes that diminish these things. Okay. So, of course, we believe, we see this and we accept it as part of reality. Uh, but it doesn't mean that we need to make that the focus of our lives. We're not denying their existence, but we're also not being ruled by them because those things, they can weigh on us. They can inhibit our ability to live in ways not only that we're content with and that we are can be proud of, but ways that where we can spread light and love in the world, right? If we're so overly focused on um, the suffering and the pain and the difficulty and the unfairness that we see in our lives, that can make it like that can be a way of letting those things win, I guess, right? And so we're totally not denying it. We're starting with, yes, this is there. In fact, when it comes to grief, going back to my earlier example, um, I always start with the hard stuff. I always start with the painful stuff. You can't skip past it. That doesn't work. We have to start by acknowledging the reality of that and becoming familiar with that. Okay. Uh, that's what works. But then it doesn't work to end there, right? It doesn't work for that to put a period on that and that's the end. We go farther. And that's what I'm talking about here. Okay. Um, so what I'm talking about today, up to this point, and I'm about halfway done, so this isn't like the introduction anymore. What I'm talking about in this video uh, assumes that we are living with an awareness of our emotions and of the suffering and the challenges that we see in this life, in our lives, in the lives of those all around us, and globally. It assumes that we know that and that we are familiar with that. Uh, and Also, again, going back to emotions, that's an important part of this, okay? Because um, we need to be able, in order to be free of regret, um, at least chronic regret, uh, we need to not exist in our emotions. And I'll get more into that in a moment here. Um, we need to not be consumed by our emotions. And part of that is acknowledging our emotions and analyzing what is there and expressing our emotions by talking about it, by writing about it, by creating, by crying or yelling, or by smiling or laughing or dancing. Uh, this assumes that we can see and feel our emotions and see that they're there. And then this is part of mindfulness work, acknowledging that there is a me that exists to observe these emotions, right? So it's not, um, I am sad, I am depressed, I am anxious, and embodying those feelings. I'm not saying, again, I'm not being language police. If that's how you describe things, that's fine. But with what I'm talking about today, we are not those things. We are feeling those things. There is a we, there is a you, there is a me that is feeling those things. When we can distinguish between the emotion and the self, then that opens up the possibility that the emotion is temporary, that the emotion will dissipate or change. Uh, it's like I'm feeling this right now, and that will change. I have not felt this before, and I may not feel this again. Okay, so what I'm talking about may sound super basic to some, it may sound super confusing to others. The most effective way to achieve this is through meditation, mindfulness, some version of that. And there are many resources out there. That's not what this video is about. I just want to let you know that in order to really understand that, you may need to do some inner work. Okay. Um, but for now, if this is confusing to you or just sounds so basic that it's meaningless, uh, I hope that you will just hear me when I say that you need to practice or at least begin to believe that it could be that your emotions in this moment do not define you. Okay. I feel like I was fumbling for words because that's a concept that's difficult to put into words. Okay, so going back to regret and things that feel like they're wasted, um, let me talk about learning experiences. Those examples that I was giving at the beginning of the video of failed relationships or failed business ventures or, um, behaviors that we wish we had never taken part of. Um, it's easy to feel like, well, let's just throw that away and start over, right? That was a waste. We need to backtrack to the beginning of that. Now that that's over, I'm hitting reset on so many areas of my life, okay? And I want to point out just that some things changed while you were participating with those relationships or with those behaviors or with those things, those experiences. You changed, you grew, you were exposed to things, you learned some things. And so you are not the same person that you were when you started with that thing that didn't go the way that you wanted it to, right? You, on some level, have grown. Now, maybe you haven't grown in the direction that you want to grow, but at least be aware that you're not the same person. And so it's really impossible. You're not backtracking. You're not traveling back in time, and like you just wasted, 15 years or 15 weeks or whatever it is. Uh, that is, this is your life is a continuous story that keeps moving forward. It only goes in one direction. And so as you do that, there are other things that happened. There are other people that have come in and gone out of your life, perhaps. There are other skills that you've learned along the way. So you're not the same person that you were in the beginning. So that's important to be aware of. Uh, And so the things that you went through, even though it hasn't ended at this point in the way that you wish it would have ended, or the way that you wish it would be continuing on, um, there are things that you learn through that experience that you may not have been able to learn any other way. Like you specifically may have, quote unquote, had to go through this to learn some of the things that you learned. Now, the whole you had to go through this, I don't find that to be an especially helpful line of thinking, like you were meant to, or you had to go through this suffering, this painful experience. Maybe that's helpful for some people. That's not helpful for me necessarily, um, except in one particular way, which I'll get to at the end of the video. But um, it's important to acknowledge that these are learning experiences. There are things that you can take from this that, or at least that you can see from these experiences that, you know what, this may have been kind of a net loss. That might be how I see this, and I'm experiencing this. This may be a net loss, but that doesn't mean that I'm throwing out the whole thing, right? There are some things that were a part of this that I want to take with me. There are some things that are a part of this that I like, that have made me grow and be refined. And It's a part of who I am in a way that I'm proud of. Okay, so there's that. It doesn't mean you have to be happy you went through it. It doesn't mean you have to be thankful for it necessarily, but you can at least see those pieces that you want to bring with you, that weren't there when you started this whole thing. Uh, I wish that I had known then what I know now. This is a very common phrase I've heard many times, of course, in my work and just in life. Um, and this speaks to this idea that, uh, you know, like time travel, basically, like, oh, I was so stupid back then. I was so ignorant. I was so naive, and I should have seen the things that I see now. Well, to employ another common phrase, hindsight is 2020. And so the things that you know now, uh, you obviously didn't know back then, right? Because if the things that you know now make it obvious that you shouldn't have done what you did then, you should have done that differently, well, then the you back then, if that knowledge was available to you, it would have been just as obvious. I hope that I said that in a clear way. Okay, so just have some grace for yourself, some patience for your past self. You don't have to hate your past self, which is, by the way, who you are now as well. You carry that with you in the ways that I was describing before about how, time keeps on moving. And so who you were back then is still part of you. Uh, so hating yourself back then is hating yourself now as well. You don't need to do that, right? Go easy on yourself. Give yourself a break at least. Be fair to yourself at least. You couldn't have known then what you know now. If you did, you would have gone down a different path, right? Easy as that. But that's not what happened. And so I guess this uh, refers to this whole category that I was just talking about, that this was indeed a learning experience, right? If you know some things now that you didn't know then, what more proof do you need that you have learned some things through this whole difficult journey that hasn't turned out the way you want to? So, one thing you can do is uh, be aware and be, on some level, grateful for the things that you know now that you didn't know then, even though it didn't turn out the way you wanted. This is one more thing you can bring forward with you in your life. Okay, one more helpful and important thing that you can do. This is kind of the last big theme I want to talk about. Uh, Great, getting a phone call here. Excuse me, I'm not going to edit this video. Oh, my only phone I'm using it as a camera. I'm going to decline that and I'll get back to it later. Um, so, excuse me. One last big theme that I want to talk about when it comes to regret and how can we handle regret? How can we make peace with these things that we wish had turned out differently? Uh, And this video isn't a magic bullet. This video isn't going to solve all of your problems, okay? The information in this video. I just hope these concepts are helpful. I hope that it moves you farther down the road toward peace in your life with these issues that didn't turn out the way you wanted them to. Um, I'm a Lord of the Rings nerd, okay? And there are bigger nerds out there than I am when it comes to Lord of the Rings. There are people who know more about it than I do, but I know more than the average person. I probably know more than the average person who's seen the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings trilogy. Here, let me 1 second here. Bear with me. Got these little figurines on my window. It's just kind of a fun little way um, to express my fandom of the Lord of the Rings. And I've got Aragorn and Arwen, Frodo, Legolas, and Gimli. I don't know why they didn't include the other hobbits. Um, I know why they didn't include Boromir, but anyway, I don't want to digress too much on that. But I say that because there's a particular passage from Tolkien. He's the guy who wrote Lord of the Rings, from his book, The Silmarillion. Okay, even the fact that I'm referring to the Silmarillion should tell you that I'm a Lord of the Rings nerd. Uh, but in the opening part of the Silmarillion, it's essentially the prologue. It's really the creation story of this fictional Middle Earth. Um, and bear with me here, okay? This isn't going to get too in the deep weeds of the nerdy. Um, but in this creation story, there's something really interesting I find that happens. Uh, And so there's this sort of creator god figure and named Eru or Iluvatar. I'll go with Eru. Okay. And Eru, and it's been a while since I've read the details, but I'll just say that Eru wants to create something, wants to create this world or this universe. And Eru doesn't want to do that by Eru's self. And so Eru first makes these sort of demigods, or these, really you could say god figures in the Greek or the Roman sense of the word, the ancient Greek and Roman gods, um, creates these gods, and they all have, of course, different personalities and different areas of expertise. Uh, and one of the gods, predictably, goes his own way, Melkor. Okay. And Melkor wants to, it doesn't like the way that Eru wants to do things his own way, Melkor's own way. And if you've seen the films, Melkor is, Sauron was a servant to Melkor. Okay. So that's how big and bad Melkor is. Um, and so the world, the universe is created through song, which, by the way, that's just awesome, I think. Uh, so that all these different gods, they sing or they play their music that only they can do based on what Eru has endowed in them. Okay, and it creates essentially this symphony, all these different, you think about the strings and the flutes and or excuse me, the woodwinds and the percussion and all these kinds of things that are so different from one another, but they work together to create something beautiful. And so through this song, through this music, the Middle Earth and that whole universe is created. But Melkor wants to do things his own way, and he doesn't want to follow what's on the sheet music. And so he makes music that is really dissonant. It really is kind of like grinding, to tones that they don't harmonize. And basically, the idea is to do things his way and to mess up what Eru is trying to do with the other gods. And the point of this is that when the song is completed, Eru is basically like, "Good job, everyone. Thank you so much for doing this work and for doing what I created you to do." Melkor, um, I saw and I heard that you did things your own way and you didn't essentially follow the sheet music and you created some serious dissonance there. I want you to know that I saw that. And I want you to know that I'm going to take what you did and weave it into the rest of the music in such a way that it's going to make the song more beautiful than it would have been without it. And you can see the tears in my eyes. Told you I'm a nerd. But I find that to be so cool, so what a helpful and beautiful myth uh, that evil, even or bad, as you might describe it, can somehow be turned to good. And there's many other. You don't have to go to the Silmarillion to hear this message, right? It's in many different spiritual traditions. Lots of people have said this throughout history, but um, that's my myth that speaks most powerfully to me, for better or worse. Uh, I'm going to take this bad and it's going to weave into the whole song in a way that makes the song even more beautiful than it would have been without it. So when it comes to regret and waste, it can be helpful to have this in your mind that you never know how things are going to go. There's this parable, and I should have pulled it up. It's been heard quite a bit now. I feel like it's kind of in the culture. I heard it in Bluey the other day when my kids were watching that, just to speak to how common it is. But I've heard it various other places too. I think it's a Buddhist thing, maybe even a Zen Buddhist thing specifically. I forget exactly where it originates, but I think it's Buddhist. But it's this story basically of this farmer, and these things keep happening, and then kind of the community comes to him and says, "Oh, it's too bad that that happened," and the farmer's like, "Oh, we'll see." And then that, because of that thing, the way that his life plays out, it's like if that thing hadn't happened, then it would have been worse for him. And so it's like, "Oh wow, it's so lucky that this happened. It's so great that this happened to you." And his response is, "We'll see." And then, because of that second thing that happened in that particular way, another bad kind of calamity comes upon him, and then they say, "Oh, wow, that's poor you. That's horrible." And we'll see, right? So it goes on, and there's like 7 or 8 different parts of the story, and it just keeps kind of going back and forth. And these things that happen that the general populace perceives as a bad thing or a good thing turns out to be actually the opposite. So of course, it demonstrates that the things that we classify as good and as bad, that we just judge and put a label on and say, "Ooh, this is something that we like and that we should be happy about, and it's 100% pure good or 100% pure bad, and we don't like it and we want it to go away." It's not as simple as that, right? That is, what is that called? That's called dualistic thinking. And that's generally not a helpful way to go through our lives because that doesn't speak to the reality that we actually experience. So don't be too quick to judge what is good and what is bad. That's the moral of that story. And so the reason that I share that is the things that have happened in your life that you might regret, uh, that feel like a waste, something that it's like, oh, well, that was something I just need to kind of throw out and be ashamed of. Um, as I was describing earlier, I guess that there are parts of that that you can take with you. You wouldn't be who you are today if you hadn't gone through that, for better or worse. And also, all of the possibility of who you could be in the future. You can't be that person unless you have gone through what you've gone through up to this point. We don't know how it's going to turn out. And so I encourage you to be open. I encourage you to let go of prejudices of your own experience and of expectation of, oh, this is definitely going to be good or this is definitely going to be bad. You never know. Try to let go of that expectation. I'm not talking about optimism or pessimism here. I'm talking about um, letting go of both of them. And I think that's really the most realistic thing that you can do because you don't know when life's going to throw you a positive or negative curveball or when something's going to be spun in an unexpected way. Let me go back to my notes here. Oh, yeah. And so part of this is thinking about your life, as I've really been describing, as a story. Okay. And I find this concept to be helpful on so many levels. Thinking of your life as a story, and you are the main character in your story, the protagonist. And you have all these side characters. Um, you are, varying levels of importance. Your family, your friends, your enemies, your coworkers, whoever it is, and of course, you're a character in their story, which is a whole other interesting thing. But just sticking with your story for the moment, um, characters develop, right? Hopefully, you're a better, truer version of yourself at the end of the story than you were towards the beginning. Hopefully, you learn some things along the way and you grow and you evolve. And if we think about stories, a lot of times the hard things, the unpleasant things, the bad things in the stories that we know and love end up being the turning points, the most important experiences that those characters go through. Why can that not be true for you? Why can you not be open to the idea that, hey, maybe this is going to somehow develop and refine me? I don't have to like it. I don't have to be happy about it, but let me at least be open in the present and in the future to this somehow working out for good, for something that I do want. And then, in addition to my story, which is the individual, there is our story. So, as I said, you are, and this is taken from Richard Rohr, by the way, this concept of my story and our story, and then the story, which I'll get into in a second. But our story, this is talking about your family, this is talking about your culture, this is talking about your kind of immediate surroundings that you are a part of. So, it's not just your story, but it's your story is really interwoven like a tapestry into a larger story. And so, in what ways can the bad things, the hard things, the painful things develop you in a way that can serve your community and your family and the people around you? How can this be used? I think about, something that uh, an addiction that I used to have that I am now helping clients with, right? So that's one example. Not only does that benefit me, I guess, but it's to make our story better. And previously, I might have told you I wish that that thing that I did before, I just want to throw it all away. That's just a waste. I just regret that entire thing. And I'm not saying that I'm happy it happened, but I am saying that there are good parts of it that I can only do good in my world because of what I went through. And then there's the story. Okay. And so this is kind of like the whole scope of human history, if you will. And to think about the fact that your life does and will continue to have ripple effects in the ways that things go. I guess that this gets to the place where it's like we just don't know. We don't know how it's going to turn out. And there are people, Vincent van Gogh comes to mind, who lived their lives and really their lives ended even in places that they probably weren't super happy or proud of. Um, but the ripple effects, the repercussions of their lives and their actions ended up making other people's lives better, making other people's lives more beautiful and enjoyable. And this is the whole scope of human history. And so you think about the choices that our ancient ancestors made that are still affecting us now. So there's the story as well. So it helps to keep in mind that this moment is not the only thing there is. You have the rest of your life, and we don't know where things are going to go. And there might be some things about right now, this time that you hate, that will be some of the most important parts of your story. And then thinking of the grander scheme, the our story and the story, you don't know how this is going to be used, if you will, to um, shine some light in somebody else's life. We don't know. So we don't have to I just all this I hope emphasizes that regret and this idea that the whole thing is bad and a waste. We just need to get rid of it and throw it away, and I need to feel ashamed about the whole thing. It's so much more nuanced than that. This video has gone a lot longer than I expected, as usual, and I just thought that this would be kind of a quick few concepts here, but on I go. So hopefully you found something helpful in this video. This is really a lot more of a philosophical video, I think, than what I've done before, but hopefully, sometimes it takes insights, it takes new concepts and perspectives to help us to grow and to understand our lives in ways that are more helpful and more effective. So, again, I hope that something from this has been helpful for you. If you're interested in my work as a therapist, where I do a lot more listening and a lot less talking, you can check out my website, gfcounseling.com. That's for Growing Forward Counseling, gfcounseling.com. You're welcome to call or text me at 586-576-6523, or you can email me at wes, at gfcounseling.com. And I'd be happy to tell you about what I do and what that looks like and how maybe you are regretting something, maybe you have something specific in your life that that was the things I talked about today hit on, and you would like to work with me individually to process through that. I invite you to get in touch with me or to share this video if there's somebody else you might think finds it helpful. So thanks for listening, and I will catch you in the next video. I have a couple of topics already that I want to talk about, which I'm very excited to do, and I'll just get to it as I'm able. So look for those as well. Thank you.